Hi, good morning and good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. Continuing a series of HR Gyan, wherein we converse with experts from the HR field. Today we have with us Nicky Davis, an
Hi.
accomplished talent developer specializing in leadership development and executive coaching with over 17 years in driving organization, leadership, and culture transformation across UK, Europe, and MENA regions, which is Middle East and North Africa. The interesting tidbit, she lives for 6 months of the year on a sailboat with her husband, sailing to Mediterranean. And Nikki, if you can touch a bit on what sailing has taught you, since I believe there would be a lot of time for contemplation and how that will help. So today, the topic that we are going to touch upon is workforce agility. We have all heard of agile as the new buzzword, agile software development, agile organizations, agile processes. Let's get a perspective of what is workforce agility and why is it important in today's context.
Hi, Sushan. Great to be here. Well, simply put, workforce agility is an ability to quickly move employees into new roles or into different areas of the organization. And it's about supporting changing needs. And boy, have we been through changing needs in the past 18 months. So a lot of organizations have been doing this without realizing that that's workforce agility.
Thank you, Nikki. That was great, and most importantly, like all experts, I guess the hallmark of an expert is de-jargonizing and simplifying something, which you did. Uh, so, taking it further in today's time of distributed workforce and work from home environments, how relevant is this concept?
It's really key, and it's something that small organizations, particularly startups or small businesses, do incredibly well because they recognize that change needs are changing all the time. And in today's world, when we've got people working from home, we've got some people in the office, and we're probably going to have a hybrid of the two. What it requires is a culture of experimentation and collaboration. And we've got to get better at collaborating when we're working remotely, or we've got some of our team that are working remotely. And it really is about not relying on emails, but using the technology tools that we have available to us to do much more collaboration. And also having access to data so that we can make data-driven decisions. And that requires us to have access to the data, but also to be measuring what we're doing. So those experiments, we see what's working, what isn't, and we can quickly pivot and adjust and move again.
That was enlightening. Now that we understand the relevance of workforce agility, it brings me to my next question. When and where can we use it?
Well, I would argue always. We see some organizations do this really well. So really big organizations like 3M, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft and Apple, they do this incredibly well. And it's because of the structures that they've put in place that enable them to respond and bring together projects. So we have this happening in organizations when people are working together on projects that cut across lots of different function areas within the business. But we forget that agility, that ability to pull together a project team is something that we need to be using much more than we do. We have that ability already. So it's really a shift in our thinking and looking at how we can implement that in more ways than we currently are. And just to kind of give you a flavor of some of the changes that we've seen recently, if you think about HR has become more and more dominant all the way through this pandemic experience. And what we've seen in our corporate clients is some of them have actually shifted where HR sits. It's no longer seen as something that sits under corporate services, for example. It's actually been made into a business unit of its own, because they recognize that if they're going to have an agile approach to business, going to have an agile workforce in order to support those changing needs, then what they need is HR to take more of a strategic role and really help skill up, look at the abilities that are within the organization and how that ability and those skills can be used in different ways in different places in the organization.
Sure. Thanks, Nikki. That was very helpful. You also touched upon, and from what I know, you work extensively with small and medium businesses. Uh, and the examples that you gave are very relevant. So for some of our audience, how can they start working on this concept? Who all should be involved? How do they take it forward? The reason that I ask this question is I see some challenges wherein, typically smaller businesses are not, or actually were not very open to the concept of extensive work from home, and the situations forced it on them. So now that they're doing it, there is some fear of loss of control, loss of information, etc., etc. So how do you propose that organizations should get over this from a mindset perspective?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because if you have a founder who really likes to be in control, and let's face it, I'm a founder of a business too, and I know you are too. We like to be in control. That's one of the reasons why we left the corporate world, is because we wanted to take back control of our lives and how we are as professionals, and what the structure is that we work within. So it's very common to see people at the top of businesses, founders in particular, want to hold on to control. The ironic thing is, if you empower people and so you delegate some of that responsibility, you actually gain more control. And so it seems a little bit of an oxymoron to say this, but the more that you can actually delegate responsibility, the more that you can actually let go of that control, that need to control, the more control you gain. And the control that you gain is really about that flexibility and that adaptability that small businesses in particular need to be, and medium-sized businesses need to be, particularly when things are changing, and things are changing all the time. So you need to be ready before the changes happen. And the best way that you can do that is making sure that you are equipping people with the right skills and abilities, and looking at where. I have a bit of a problem with small businesses not seeing this as being relevant to them, because actually in startup mode, we are doing this really, really well. And then we tend to think, well, as we get bigger, or we've been around the block a few times, we don't need to do it as much. We start thinking about moving into more of a mature organization. But if you keep that startup mentality and you're hiring people for great attitude, you can always train people up in skills. The one thing that you can't do is so easily, you can do it, but it's not so easy, is change people's attitudes. And so as startups, we're really good at looking at an individual and thinking whether they're a good fit to the business vision and what we want to achieve overall. And then thinking about, okay, they might have skills in this particular area, but we can skill them up in how we want things to be done. It's taking that attitude, that startup attitude, and really keeping hold of it. And that's what Apple did so well. You know, Steve Jobs, when he initially set up Apple with the team of people that he had, he famously said, we've got no committees within the organization, and they have a very flat structure. And it's that ability that, or at least that structure, that helps them bring together project teams really, really quickly and skill people up in different areas to work on different things and different ideas that makes it work. And that's very much a startup mentality. So maybe it's about small and medium-sized business founders and going back to that sense of being a startup. What were they doing then that worked incredibly well for them that they can use now? What were the sorts of questions that they were asking then, which were probably about challenging assumptions about how we do things, that they could ask now? So some of it is about asking better questions, and some of it is about making that shift to that startup mentality that they had before, and they need to hold on to now.
Sure. Thanks, Nikki. I would like to draw your attention to you work extensively with business owners, right? In your expertise as an executive coach. Is there some advice that you can provide to our listeners? Because most of them are business owners themselves, and as I choose conversations with them, they reflect on the point that it's a very lonely place to be, in the sense of there's not much, not many folks around where you can bounce your ideas freely. So and the team looks up to you as the provider of all answers. So it tends to get difficult at times. So
Yeah,
any advice on that part?
yeah, my one piece of advice would be to look for a great mentor. There's two aspects to my business. One which is about working with really big organizations and developing leaders in those organizations. And then the other one, like you say, is about working with small, medium-sized business owners and helping them be more successful in their businesses. And that's really a mentoring role a lot of the time. And it can be a place where people just want to bounce ideas. They just want to be able to bounce ideas off of somebody and kind of check that they're not being crazy or they're not making taking on too much undue risk. So my piece of advice would be to look for a mentor, somebody who's achieved the level of success that you're looking to achieve, somebody that will really listen to you, and somebody that's going to challenge your thinking. So it may be finding somebody that thinks very differently to you rather than looking for somebody who's like-minded, because at the end of the day, it's the grit in the oyster that creates the pearl. So you really want somebody whose thinking is different to you to help you see things from a different perspective and come up with better questions. I guess the other thing that I would say is somebody who is going to move from being that mentor and much more into a coaching role as your experience gains and you're looking for better questions to be asked of you rather than being at a point where you're learning from somebody else's experience. So it starts to challenge you in a very different way.
Sure. Thanks, Nikki. That brings me to my last question. And I wish we could continue the discussion longer. Probably in the next series, we'll do that. Is drawing from your experience of working across geographies, be it UK, Europe, Middle East, North Africa, these are geographies which tend to behave differently from what we've heard and seen. Any tips that you'd like to share, some best practices that come out from different geographies that people can imbibe and then move on from a mindset or agility perspective?
That's a great question, and it would take me longer than a couple of minutes to answer that one. So what I would say is there is really good practice going on in every organization. The organizations that, if I relate it to this area around agility, the organizations that do really well around being agile and having this agility are the ones where there are great communication between team members going on. There's great collaboration going on within the organization. And a lot of it hinges on, you can tell if an organization has got it right if you look at their performance management systems, the way that they measure performance. So those performance management systems that are very rigid and are about achieving certain numbers often restrict how people work in collaboration with others in other teams and other departments. And it's really where organizations have, maybe they have team or project-led performance measures, or maybe even their performance measures are around involvement in experimentation or involvement in collaborative projects, that you actually see a difference. And the reason for that is because the performance measurements match the culture of the organization, which matches the business strategy and matches the vision and what the organization wants to achieve. So where you've got that congruence on all those different levels, you see an organization that has this agility and this ability to move quickly employees into new roles or around different areas of the organization that support changing needs.
Sure. Thanks, Nikki. This was really helpful and very pertinent to our times, and I hope our users benefit from it. What I'll do is I'll also share your details so that people, if they're interested, they can reach out to you for more details on this. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that would be great. And thank you, Sushant. Thank you for the opportunity.